The proper patch.
Hey everybody, welcome to the proper patch. Today is really exciting because I'm going to take you through how I digitize a patch from beginning to end. I'm using a software called Chroma Luxe, which is a software I really like to use to do this process. Got a really fun patch to work on today. I'm really excited. It's a collaboration with Gripless. I'll put the link below. Really awesome illustrator, and the patch is called Kanye Rest. It's a really fun wordplay patch. It's going to be really cool to make. So I'm going to go ahead and start off. We're going to open up Chroma Luxe right here, and Chroma Luxe is, for those who are not familiar, is the kind of high-end version of the Chroma software. There's kind of 3 tiers, and Luxe is the highest. It has all the different tools on the side. I'll put a link to the website below, and they will show you all the different types of levels that they have and the different features that they have. But I tried a bunch of different software programs, and this one definitely I like the best. It felt the most like a design software that I would use or have been using, like the Adobe suite. So it was really familiar, and it works really well. It feels like it was kind of designed for designers in mind, which I really appreciate. So the first thing I'm going to do, obviously create a new design. And the way I have my grid set up here is in inches. So I can kind of get a good idea once I place my artwork in here about how big the patch will ultimately end up being. And that's kind of how I size it up. So I'm going to drag in, first thing I'm going to do is drag in the artwork that I'll be tracing here. This is, once again, this is from Gripless. It's one of his pieces of art. It's really cool looking. So this should be a lot of fun to do. So once I have the artwork in here, I'm going to go ahead and essentially lock this layer as kind of the background layer. That's what this little button right here will do. So now the layer is locked and I can't really affect it. And just like any other design software that, this works in different layers. And the background layer is typically where I put the artwork. And when you build a patch, you kind of build it from the bottom to the top. Think about as it prints out the different threads, it will kind of layer the threads on top of each other. So you want to do the coverage on the bottom and then work your way up to kind of the outlines that sit on top. Once you start thinking that way, it becomes a lot easier to design the patch. So currently, after just dropping this patch in, you can see it's going to be about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5.5, almost 6 inches long, which is a fairly large patch. But I like making my patch bigger. My patch is bigger because it just gives more room for some of the details. And I just like bigger patches, and they look better to me with more coverage of the thread. And then also you can see on the vertical, so we're about 2.25 tall. But the first thing I like to do is start with this tool, which is called the Steil Tool, Steil, which really is a lot like a pen tool, or creates more like lines. So I'm going to go through and kind of outline the entire drawing using the black. Or using a color, and then that will be my base layer, and then I'll build the colors behind that layer. So zoom in right here. And my settings for the Steil Tool is usually I like being about a 1.5. You can see right here, that's width in millimeters. That gives me a nice solid outline, not too big, not too small. And then I keep my density at 0.4. And then all this stuff I kind of leave the way it is. Don't really need to change that. But once I have it at 1.5, I hit apply. Got my color. Got my tool here. And then I'll just go through and start tracing this drawing. And I like to kind of keep it at the things at the top first. So we'll start right here at the hair. And I'm holding down the command key that will give me the round angles. You can see it's a pretty good size width right here, and I can change this to more realistic thread for this part. Go through the eyes, and this This is probably the most tedious part of the project, but you also want to make sure these lines get exactly the way you want them to be, because this ultimately will be what really drives the drawing or the final outcome of the patch. So this is a little smaller detail down here for the ear, so I'm going to probably change that to a 1mm width. So you can see there, it's a little smaller, fits a little better, so it should look a little better as far as the detail there. Same here, I'm going to probably by the nose, this is a lot of detail, so I'm going to go ahead and do that at a 1 as well. So I notice it's still a little tight, so I'm going to go ahead and reduce these three lines to 1. Oops. Yep, they weren't 1. Now they're 1. Okay. Go around the other the other ear, 1 as well. Oops. Do that again. Perfect. All right. Now we're going to go through and do this drop. Here, and then connect this beard there and bring that up to back to 1.5. Oops. Just like that. And at this stage, you really don't have to worry about colors right now. You're pretty much just dealing with this black outline of everything, and then once you get past the black, then we can start building our color palette below and kind of figure out what that looks like. So I'm going to change it back to 1 and do some of these details right here in the mouth. So I know another thing that this software has is auto digitation. So you can essentially, drop in the artwork and then just hit the auto. But in my experience, that really doesn't work too well. It doesn't really, no matter how good the drawing is, it doesn't always read it very well. And then you get all these really strange things. And then it ends up taking you just as long to clean it up as it would have done just to, draw it, from scratch. So I don't even really mess with that anymore. And I just draw them from the ground up. And not only that, but you kind of understand your drawing a lot better. You understand where the nuances are. So when you do go back and fix it and change it for after you print, it's a heck of a lot easier to understand where the issues are when you built it yourself. So this one I'm going to change to 1. So it's really just, just like line widths as if you were drawing in Illustrator, same idea. So the nice thing about patches is, or drawing with thread is that, let me draw that one again, is that you really can make a lot of mistakes because the thread itself is very kind of a crude drawing instrument. It's not like a plotter or a laser printer where everything comes out like perfectly, symmetrical and clean. It's, it has a little bit of nuances in it, and that's kind of what I like about it. So if you do make a mistake or your thread line isn't perfectly angular or whatever, it probably you wouldn't really notice it when you go to print. So that's just kind of one of those cool aspects of embroidering. So now we're going to go around the jacket right here. Catch up a little bit. And we're going to go right here. And I like these tiny little details that Gripless used in his illustration, you know, on the jacket, these kind of little subtle little guys right here. I'm going to try something a little different for those. I'm going to do a different stitch for those. I'll show you that in a second, but I think those are pretty neat. And they kind of form, you know, the puffiness of this dude's jacket. Switch it back to a 1. It's looking pretty good. So I try to make the outside of the patch, these kind of outside lines that are going to get traced, a little thicker, just because when the laser cutter gets to it or whatever you're cutting this out, you have just a little bit more room on your outline for, you know, possibly mistakes. So versus just using a very thin line, and then you don't have a lot of room to work with. Oh yeah, one major important thing I forgot to do is save this guy, because this software, as good as it is, has crashed on me numerous times. So, and then you kind of lose your stuff. So I just have a little folder here. Rest. Save that. Now we're saved. This does crash. It does have some stability issues that I've noticed. So pretty embarrassing to make a video and then it crash. And then I'd have to start all over again. I don't have time for that. Work our way over the shoes here. So these bigger kind of black fill areas, those are going to be a different tool that we're going to use for that. Those are going to be fill strokes. So I'll show you that in a second once we get these outlines complete. Shoe. And you notice here too, you can see right here you got some extra lines here, or they just need to be smoothed out. You can change the line from a line to a smooth line, what they call a smooth line, and then you get this, you'll round the shape out a little bit better. So that's another little trick to kind of fix your paths. Go back to a 1. That should all be fine there. All good there. Let's finish up the rest of this side. Put it back on a 1.5. sometimes you do have to exaggerate some of these lines because you'll see once you start printing stuff that things don't always show up because either the embroidery it's just too small, or it just, the patch itself is too small, and then it just becomes ineffective, the line. So what I've noticed is that sometimes I make lines a little bigger than they probably would be if I were just illustrating it. Just something you got to get used to. Trial and error stuff. Oh, these little hands that he drew, they're really cool. If you're an illustrator too, if you're watching this and you got a couple cool ideas that you want to get digitized or turn into a patch, please drop me a line, send me a link to your stuff. I'm always looking for new illustrations to practice on and to put through on my through my channels to kind of spread the word about patches and different illustrators, help them grow their channels as well. Oops, fix that. The other thing I noticed too is that it's definitely, the better the illustration, the better the patch will be. So if you work with a bad illustration, you're probably not going to fix it very well in the software. It's not really a drawing software. It's a digitizing software. So if I were going to try to, obviously I can draw lines and do all that kind of stuff in here, but it's not really that conducive to actually concepting a drawing in this software. You really want to have your drawing completely figured out before you get it in here, because really this space is really just for digitizing. I wouldn't want to be stuck actually drawing something in here, and I have, and it's not a lot of fun. Probably change that to a 1. Get a little better. So there's a lot of funky lines in here that are probably just too small. And they're probably not going to turn out very well. So I'm going to just go in and kind of exaggerate these a little bit. So you just select on them, and then this tool allows you to kind of go in and toggle your path. So I just want to kind of exaggerate it a little bit. Don't be mad at me, Gripless, for changing your art, but got to get the patch right. So that should show up a little better, but I'm just going to go ahead and change this to a 1 because I don't want it to be really bad. We got the little ring in there, but I'll probably just do a black line for that as well. Get rid of that point. It's just tons of little tweaking. And if you've been doing this longer than I have and you have some tips, please drop them in the post or videos that I can watch and get better too, because I'm sure for everything I'm showing you, there's a dozen other ways of doing it, but this is the way that gives me the best results. This little ring right there. That should, got a little ring right there too. And And those should print okay, but you know, you never know until you actually get it on the machine, and then you're like, okay, that didn't work, or that worked great. So you just kind of start somewhere and then make adjustments as you go. These lines in the pillow. All right, now we're going to finish this part out. Get a bigger piece right here. And they have a couple different pen tools. This tool I like a lot. I think it's called the Freeform tool, or I'm not exactly sure. But there's like a more traditional pencil. There's a more traditional kind of pen tool. But this does really well for tracing, in my opinion. So these little green and red dots, these are interesting. So those are essentially your beginning and end points for your needle. So where the green is, when it starts that thread, it will cut in, it will start there and then end there and then kind of go back, unless I move this to the end, and then it'll be the end. But I honestly, you know, haven't really had a major issue with those. You know, kind of wherever they land up, they land up. I had another single needle embroidery machine, which totally had to make sure those beginning and end points were right where they needed to be, so that they didn't screw up the cadence of the when it was actually printing. So I spent a lot more time with them. Since I have this new machine, I really haven't cared too much about it. I just kind of let them go where they land up, and it seems to be fine. So hopefully you don't have that problem. And I picked this software also. It's a really good software, and I tried a bunch of different ones, but it also works, you know, it's the native software for my actual embroidery machine, which is Ricoma MT 2001. So it's a really nice, you know, having the two work together, you know, just like any other software hardware team is going to give you a better result. So I believe that's all we got to do a couple more things here. We got the Kanye Rest type I'm going to do here. I'm going to draw that by hand. But before I do that, I'm going to go in and do these little bubble kind of accent marks for this jacket. So I'm going to use a different tool for that. I'm going to use this Satin Tool, which I really love. It allows you to kind of create these, what they call a Satin Stitch, which is kind of when it goes back and forth versus a, you know, a single needle, it just kind of draws a line. So you kind of create this almost like a fill. You can see here. And it creates this kind of cool, you know, little arrow here that will just kind of create this point. You can kind of see there. So it works really well with like little accents, shadows and stuff like that. And I also feel like you can get some of the tightest detail on an embroidery machine using the Satin Stitch. Just go around, and technically you could cut and paste the same stitch if you didn't want to draw them all, but I kind of like when they're, you know, all a little different, just like if you were hand drawing this drawing, you know, they would be inconsistent. That's kind of what makes it kind of neat. So here's a kind of an angled one. You can see right there. But to me, this tool really gives you the detail that, you know, your embroidery can really stand out versus just a straight outline. And the more you play with this thing, you know, the cooler effects you can do. And there's some people, some makers out there that make some really incredible patches using this tool, using satin stitches. I'm probably just going to copy this one. That's pretty much all those little guys that he drew. And at any point, if you want to see your drawing underneath, just hide that layer. You got a few there. You got them all. You can do a couple down here. All right, so now let's go to the type, save it. As you can see, I mean, it doesn't, kind of looks like a little bit of a mess right now, but when you go and you take it off of this and we do the black and we do the color, it's going to come together pretty well. It should look really good. So I'm going to just trace this typeface with a 1.0 width steel line because it's got a lot of detail. You can create typefaces in this software, but I haven't had a ton of luck doing that. You know, they look okay, but when you get this small, it's just better to draw it. And exaggerate it when you need to, just to make sure the line is going to actually read. Kind of got a cool swoop to it. And once again, tracing this is also going to get kind of that, you know, that kind of fun hand-drawn look to it versus, you know, just typing out a typeface. Oops, try that one again. Much better, okay. All right. There you go, got the type, that looks pretty good. So now the next step is we're gonna lock this in right here. We're gonna change it to black actually, so I'm gonna change this to, I use Moderna poly neon threads. So when I have some of them memorized, for example, black is 1800, but it really doesn't matter when you get to the colors on here. That's all about how you pick them, the threads after completed your drawing. You just want to make it representational, but picking the actual colors really happens with swatches. It doesn't happen in the software. At least I haven't found an effective way to do that because it doesn't look the same when you print it. So I'm going to lock this layer down, and then I'm going to go in and use this tool to get my black fills. So this is this little symbol right here is your fill tool, complex fill. So it just fills in the space with the solid color. So after you have your lines, this is essentially the tool you would need to fill everything in. And that little yellow line there, that's your angle tool or your angle bar. So that will tell you which way the thread angles go. Definitely in certain situations, that angle thread or the way the angles go could really change the effects in a really cool way. So I'll show you a little bit about that. So right now for his hair, trace the outline. So you can see the angle line right here. It's going this direction. I think it should be kind of a little bit more off to the side like that. That should make it feel a little flatter. But right here for his goatee, I made it kind of go in a straight down line, so make it a little thicker like that. So it's just something you play with to kind of get the different angles, and that will add some dimension to the final print. Eyebrows, I'll do it like that. Wait, nope. If you hit delete once, this was another thing that the software was a little goofy on, but if you hit delete once, it takes the last path off. But in like Illustrator, that will just delete your whole, the whole fill that you have there. But if you just hit delete once on this, it just takes off the last stroke you did. But if you hit Command Z, then it will actually take off the last complete thing you did outside of your drawings or outside of that specific path. So it's a little funky, but once you get used to it, I actually like it a lot. I think it's pretty smart. So I'm going to go ahead and fill this in, and now obviously it's going to cover up his goatee, but I'll show you how to create a hole there, or his mouth I should say, so that you can see his mouth come through. So for this, I'm going to kind of do this goatee a lot like I did the hair. So I switch it to here so we can kind of see through. This is kind of gives us a transparent view of the threads. I select the outline right here, and then I say add hole, and now it will give me this opportunity to carve out, this little hole inside of this other path, this fill that I created. So there you go. Switch it back. Now we have fill. Now we have his goatee. That whole tool is very, very nice. Works great. So this, for the shoe, we got these little white dots on here. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill this in all black, and then I'll go back at the end and add these white dots on the top layer. I'm not going to carve those out because they're too small a shape to kind of come through. So I just want a clean fill here of black, and then I'll go in and add those white in a second. Good. See, there's a little shadow right there. I love those little shadows. They really bring a lot of dimension to the patch. So anytime I get an opportunity to add a shadow, makes me very happy. I just know they're going to turn out good. All right, so I think we got all the black. We'll hit a save here. So you can see it already counted the stitches. Got 10,000 stitches in here, one color. Our final width and height of the outline is 5.6 by 2.68. So there's the outline. Now I'm going to go in and start coloring. So now I want to set my color palette, at least my digital color palette. So I will these are the pre-selected colors. So I'm going to just go in and select and change the color I want it to be. So you can see right here. Oops. There you go. We're going to find a color, just kind of drag it next to it. It's like that's pretty close. So that will be our color of the his jumpsuit. For the blue of his kind of drool. Something like that. And then brown for his skin. It's pretty close. Use this color. And then we have gold, which we'll keep here. This is a good gold for his rings. And then for the pillow, it's kind of this off-white color. So I'll go ahead and use that. So that should be all the colors that I can see. And then there's obviously white. And white is 802 Ice Ballet. That's what they call Moderna white. All right. So those should be our 7 colors that we're going to need. I always start with the darker colors on top. And the reason I do this is that I want to make sure that, you know, there's no bleed through, because if you start putting lighter colors on darker colors, you have to layer too much, and then you start seeing the darker colors underneath bleed through, and that will really affect the final look. So I try to start with the darker shades and then work my way into the lighter ones. But in this one, it's all very simple because of the way he drew it. So it's all pretty much just solid fills. And I just go ahead and start drawing around the area. They don't have to be as precise because it's going to sit underneath these outlines. You just want to make sure there's, you know, a healthy amount of overlap. Like in here, you don't want to have it butt right up to it. You want to have it like even that can overlap all the way over. I don't need to go around and carve through all that because you know, it's not a precise thing with the printing. So if it gets off a little bit, you don't want it to, you know, have the background fabric show through. So there's this, and I'll probably see where my angle line is. Not a great angle line. I'm going to change that. Yep, that's a little better. So you can see it's kind of on the top layer now. Well, that's real easy. We'll just pull that to the back. Once we finish each color, once we finish the color, then I'll go back and put that to the back. That will be the last step. So when we get to these hands here, we want to make sure that the ring is still got a hole for it to show through. And if some of these get too close, once you print it, you'll know, and you just make the adjustment. I think there is like a magic wand tool here, but one thing, I'll show you how to use that in a second, but I don't really think it works that great. Once again, it just doesn't do the overlap, and the overlap is clutch. So like for example, I'll do it right here. See, doesn't really follow it precisely. So you have to go there and adjust all that crap anyways. And it just doesn't save a lot of time, in my opinion. Just Just keep going. Here's our blue. Back to our fill tool. See, since that's a light color, I'm going to go ahead and change the density from a 4 to a 3. You can see how it fills in tighter. I want to make sure there's enough fill, enough layers of density of that thread so that nothing shows through. I'll probably do that with the red too, just because that's a little lighter color than this brown is. The brown should print fine. So we're going to go into red. Oh, yeah, we finished our brown, so we're going to go ahead and put that guy behind. You can see it's filled in nicely. Put the blue behind that. It sits in there nicely. Okay, so now let's go to the red. Just a slight overlay over here is fine. Doesn't have to be exact. I'll include this top piece here, but I won't do the rest of the sweater. I'll do that in a different path. Change that angle. Do this guy right here. Make a little different angle line because it would be a different cut of that jumpsuit. That should add some dimension to it. And for this fill, I do this tatami pattern. It's kind of the basic fill pattern. There's really not a, there's other patterns that they have, but they're really, I only really use them for like special effects. So like brick, horn pattern, they're just different types of patterns that, they only make sense when you really need them. But if you're just trying to color stuff in, this tatami works pretty well. Push that up. Change that line just a little bit. And let's finish up the rest of his pants here. This is going to be a bulk of the thread printing. Obviously, there's a lot of coverage for this red. yeah, almost 10,000 stitches just for the red alone. It's a lot. All right, let's put the red in the back. I'm gonna put the red in the way back. Have that print first, and I'm gonna set it to, it's set at 3. That's a little dense, so I'm gonna do a 0.35. That should be more than enough. Save on some stitches, save on some printing time. That should look good. Let's do the gold rings. Perfect. There we go. Now the, oops, the pillow innards. Go. Move those two guys to the back. Definitely want these to be at a 3 and a 3, yeah, as far as the density, because they're super light colors. Those after the red. Save. Now the only thing left should be this white. Here. Now you could technically, if you print this on white fabric, you could technically leave this out and let it be the fabric. I like doing full thread fills. I think it adds weight to the patch, gives it a little bit higher quality and consistency. But technically with a big flood like this, it's either white or black, you could leave it the fabric color. And it will create a little dimension, but I don't think dimension on this particular patch is a good thing. Change my mind in the comments. All right, there you go. So the angle line on this should be something like that. And we're going to put this one in the way back. Print that first. So we just got to add the white to his shoes right here. So I'm going to turn this off, turn to transparency. And I'm going to create a couple little fills down here for his shoes. And I'm not even really sure if these are going to look right, but like I said, we can adjust those after the first print. I've almost always had to print everything at least 2 or 3 times to get it right. And these are just some of those little areas that are like, did that work? And they almost never do. Switch it back, and we're going to fill in. That looks pretty good, actually. Move this down. That's not going to be enough room for this. Move that down. Forgot these. So that guy should be in the back. So we'll add that to, just drag it in there, and now it's part of that. All right. Hit save. So what you can do is take off the background here. Hide the back, and then kind of zoom in, and you know, that should basically what it looks like. It's pretty cool. A pretty cool patch. So we're going to delete all the other colors. These are our core colors right here. I don't know what the, okay, that's that. All right. And next thing we're going to do is we're going to select everything. So we're going to hit Command A. Actually, let's unlock this too. Command A, and then go to this little thought bubble right here, and where it says end command, we're going to put it on trim. So that should trim every single stitch or stitch that I created, so that way there's not all these run stitches and everything jumping all the way around, and that should clean it up really nicely. And then we can see right here we landed up, so good size patch, good color count here. And you could do a little instant replay of what the patch print will look like, which I love to watch this. Starts with the white, goes to the red, the yellow, a little bit of blue. So as you can see, this is when it looks like nothing. And then as you start to fill in the black, our Kanye starts coming to life. And that's the guy right there. So you can see right here, so here's all the different information, the exact size, and it should give you the colors too. Right there. So there's your color build outs. So now you can take this color card and then go to your swatch list and then actually match up the exact color threads that you want to use for each one of these builds. And then you're off to the races. So thank you, everybody. Took us all about almost an hour to complete this to digitize Kanye over here, but once again, we know the print's really clean. We did all this. We did all the digitizing ourselves. So we know exactly where the color fills are, the lines are. We know how to correct it when we go to print it if there's any issues. And that's just the way I like to do it. It's just one way of doing it. But if you have any notes or comments or questions, drop them in the feed below. Also, please follow me at The Proper Patch on Instagram, where you can see all the patches that I make. And then I sell them at theproperpatch.com and then also at Etsy. So thanks a lot for hanging out. And once again, if you have any questions, let me know. Really appreciate it. Happy patching.